And we'd like to welcome you to Water Talk. Hey, our show is brought to you by Water Pros. Paul the Waterman will be joining us shortly. But we're going to kick things off today. You have heard us mention our next guest really over the last year and a half or so, Dr. Grant Bailey with South Denver Cardiology. He was in the news and did a story on microplastics and some different things like that. And Paul and I have referred to him several times, as I mentioned, over the last year and a half or so. And as luck would have it, he is my cardiologist. And so I invited him to come in studio with us today, did our Haystack program with us, and agreed to stay on here on Water Talk with us here for a little bit today to further educate us here on, hey, our water and our health and all that. So, Dr. Bailey, thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. It's my pleasure to come in today and chat about this because these are really important current topics that are that everyone's asking about now.
Yeah, for sure. All right, when it comes to our water, as I told you before we started the show is about water talk, and we were just talking about our health, what good, clean water can mean to our health, and we'll get into your topic with the microplastics that you did a year or so ago. But what's your feeling on our water quality today?
Well, certainly, I don't consider myself an expert on the topic of water quality per se, but what I do know is that and we were talking about this a little bit offline, is that you are what you eat, right? So your body is very much affected by what you put into your body. So I preach to all of my patients, there's one way to treat your conditions and to make you healthier, and that's we all know there's medicines that the doctor prescribes. This will lower your blood pressure, this will lower your cholesterol, this will help prevent a heart attack or stroke. But I say what's more important than all of the medications is what you put in your body every day, from the day you're born, from the cradle to the grave, what enters your body every day. And when I say that, of course, the people know I'm referring to the food you eat and the water you drink, right? And so you really are what you eat. And so nowadays we know that what you ingest every day has long-term effects on your health, and diet and the type of water you drink is very, very impactful on your overall health. There's tons of recent data that has come out which is suggestive, and this is not controversial, it's not conspiratorial at all. This is in mainstream medical journals, that there are impurities and toxins in our water. So the most recent article I was reading was about pesticides. And we know that, when Monsanto made glyphosate, and these pesticides have been around for decades, and they said, this is so safe. There's a famous interview with the guy who made the pesticide glyphosate, who said, this is so safe you could drink a glass of it theoretically. And then the interviewer said, okay, well, will you drink a glass of it right now? Which, of course, he declined.
Yeah.
So there was an article published in JAMA, which was really interesting, and that showed your risk of developing neurological disease, specifically Parkinson's and some of these motion disorders, was directly correlated with your proximity to golf courses or facilities like farms or golf courses that use large volumes of pesticides. Well, what is that telling you? These pesticides are in our water supply. Mm-hmm. And so they're not, it's really hard to track exactly how much, but we know that there is exposure to all of us from things like pesticides, microplastics, and things like that. Now, this is a super new topic of public health. If you go researching it, there's not a ton of information out there. We talked about, you can look up what the EPA requires be tested in the water and its concentrations and what they regulate, and other chemicals that they don't test for at all and don't regulate. So it's a really new topic of interest for a lot of people, and now the medical journals are picking it up.
Yeah. Now, we mentioned microplastics, and I can't remember if it was Channel 7, Channel 9, one of those you did a story with, but what was the premise of them contacting you about microplastics?
Yeah, so like I said, the medical journals are picking up this topic and saying, well, what is the effects on our health if we're all ingesting pesticides in the water supply, microplastics in the water? Is it affecting our health? And there was this landmark article in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is considered, the premier medical journal of the United States. and they were testing microplastics in people's plaque inside their arteries. So they actually looked for people who just had a stroke and who had plaque buildup in their carotid arteries, which are the two main arteries that supply blood to your brain, and they run in the front of your neck here. And they found these people, and people who'd had a stroke, they actually took samples of their carotid plaque and then looked at it under a microscope and found that there is plastic. There's actually microplastic in your plaque that's building up in your body, and that the presence of microplastic had a strong correlation with risk of stroke and plaque rupture and things like this.
That's crazy, isn't it?
And so this is not fringe stuff. This is now medical mainstream, right?
Right.
So I think to start, it's important to let's define what is a microplastic, because people say, well, what the hell is a microplastic? Yeah. The way I think of it is like this: if I eat a banana and then I take the banana peel and I throw it out the window of my car and it sits in the farmer's field somewhere, a banana is purely made of organic substances, right? It's basically carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. And in a short amount of time, those organic molecules, they break down into their original molecular form. So they'll decompose, right? And so a banana, if you want to, you could throw it in the pot of your plant and it'll break down into soil, and the plant will use that to grow. And the same is true with a lot of different things that we use. They're organic in nature, right? So paper is organic. So paper, toilet paper, it breaks down well in the environment into its individual molecules, right? And then can be reused. So that's sort of what we call organic or natural stuff. Plastics are not that. So they are man-made inorganic molecules. Plastics are made of hydrocarbons, or fossil fuels, if you want to call them that. And what they're doing is they're taking hydrocarbon molecules and then they're making chemical reactions in a lab with inorganic molecules like chlorine, and they're making these ultra-strong bonds between the hydrocarbon and inorganic molecules, which then make a solid that is extremely durable. Now, that's good. So if you go into your house plumbing and you say, well, what are these pipes made of? They're made of PVC, which is polyvinyl chloride, which is a plastic, right? And you look at the pipe, and that'll last you 100 years. And it's in 100 years, when you look at it, it's going to look the same, right? Mm-hmm. So the benefit of plastics is they're cheap. Hydrocarbons, fossil fuels are readily available. They're easy to make for next to nothing, and they're incredibly durable. So the drawback of the plastics being incredibly durable is that unlike a banana peel or a piece of paper or anything that's organically based, they do not decompose at all. They're completely insoluble, so there's no solvents like water that dissolve them. And so a plastic doesn't biodegrade in the same way that something else does, which is to say it breaks down into its individual molecules and then is reused in the biodiversity cycle. A plastic maintains its original molecule for tens of thousands of years, so they don't break down. So the only way for a plastic to degrade is just to break into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces.
Right.
But even when you go down to the micrometer level, it's still a piece of plastic. You can't break the bonds between the hydrocarbon and the chemical reaction that occurred in the factory. So plastics don't degrade and get worked back naturally into the life cycle. They just break into smaller and smaller pieces. And so the consequence of that now is this concept of a microplastic, which is defined as a plastic as less than, let's say, 5 millimeters or something really small. But they've identified microplastics that are down to like the micron size, like tiny as like a red blood cell, you know. Wow. But when you look at that molecularly, it's still a piece of plastic. It didn't break down into original carbon molecules. It's still a small piece of plastic. And so now we know that these microplastics are found in the food supply and in the water supply, and we're all ingesting them every day.
Interesting. Dr. Grant Bailey is with us once again from South Denver Cardiology. And, hey, check out southddenvercardiologies.com. They do a lot of great kind of preventative type scanning type deal. They offer a lot of different tests. And as I mentioned before, Dr. Bailey is actually my cardiologist, and so we are glad to have him here on the show. Now, when you did that story on microplastics, so are you seeing more of that now as the months and the years go by, and hearing more about it in these journal medicines, it sounds like?
Right, that's a great question. So the one thing I will say is that this is a new field. So this is something that's just now becoming a source of inquiry or focus for the medical community. So if you read the article that was in New England Journal, they actually had to do pathology, which is you have to obtain a piece of the plaque from the artery, so you have to surgically cut it out. And they actually put it under special microscopes to assess for plastic particles, and also they were also even doing like really sophisticated tests to decide what type of plastic is in there. And actually that technology it's not available. We're not routinely testing for it, right? So in these early phases, all that's available to us is to say, let's recognize that this is a problem, and let's talk about ways that we can reduce this risk, which is exposure to microplastics. And I think that's why you wanted to talk about it on the water episode,
Sure.
Because if you read it, it says, where are you getting microplastics from? And it's probably mostly from the water supply, because these plastic particles are so small, they're not usually filtered out by normal filtration systems, so they can be even at the very small microscopic level.
Right. And I asked you before we started this, I said, do you have an RO system? And you said,
Right.
yeah. So you've
Yes.
got a reverse osmosis system in your home.
Yeah, so our drinking water, we use reversed osmosis for all the drinking water. So my kids and I, when we have water, it goes through that. It's super easy to install. You have to change the membrane filters like a few times a year. It takes 1 second. And so it was actually my wife's idea, of course, because all good ideas spring from in our household spring from her, and so we love it, and it tastes good too. The water is totally,
Yeah, I mean, it's
it
unbelievable.
tastes amazing.
Yeah, we just did it a couple of years ago with Paul and Water Pros, and I'm telling you, I think we've lived in our house 22 years, never had a drink out of the faucet before that.
Right.
I was buying bottled water like crazy.
Well, I grew up drinking from the garden hose.
Yeah, well, me
that
too, dude, in
explains a lot.
Texas. Hey, I grew in Texas. There's no telling all the things we got built up in our system from a garden hose, for sure.
And I also live on a golf course too. So when I read that article, I was like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm glad I have the reverse osmosis."
So where do you see this? Do you see this, the medical community wanting to find out more about this?
I think so. I think so. This is, I would say this. This is not a new – there's a lot of corollaries or things that are similar to this, right? Mm-hmm. What do I mean by that? I mean, there are times in the last 200 years of human progress and development where technology has been great, and it's helped us move forward as a species and advanced civilization and give us all better quality of life and longer life expectancy. So – but then once you have this technology and you have all the benefits of plastics, which are they're cheap, they allow us to imagine if a car had to have everything in it made out of metal that was hand molded. Sure. A car would cost $1 million, but instead you make it out of most of it's plastic. It's cheap. So there's lots of benefits, and now the benefits and the technology of plastic, everything is plastic, from medicine to your home, your car, everything you wear and eat. And so society has benefited from plastics. They've moved us on. They've given us a longer life expectancy. And now we've progressed so much, we got to the point of where we're actually, as a society, able to look back and say, oh, what are the negatives of this? And let's start to reverse this process and say, thank you, plastics, for what you've done for us. But now there's going to be a reversal of the ship, right? There's going to be less plastics. There's going to be technology that comes out of ways to try to metabolize the plastics or get them to degrade or break down and get them out of the food and water supply. Mm-hmm. So the best example I give is the Industrial Revolution, right? So we've discovered the combustion engine, and so then we started burning fuel. And you read the stories from the 19th century in London where if it would rain, the rain would come like black soot from the sky, and everyone the average life expectancy was 40 years old, But then all of a sudden we said, okay, well, that's not good. Let's, as a society, let's come up with clean emission standards. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So we evolve as a society, and then we recognize things are a problem, and we go address them. So that's where I think this is absolutely going.
Yep, absolutely.
When this becomes mainstream and people realize that in our water supply and in our food supply that we're ingesting these plastics and that they're becoming part of your body, they're sticking in your organs or causing vascular disease, then there's going to be public health policy against that. They're going to, and one of the answers is they're going to start saying everyone should get a reverse osmosis system in their home, and what you drink every day, you should filter that out through really small particles, and that's what reverse osmosis does. Is very small particles are filtered out.
Yep. Last question. Appreciate your time, but do you see at some point where maybe, like with transfusions or anything like that, they might even want to filter blood to get some of these? I mean, could these plastics get in our bloodstream?
Yeah, so I think the problem with that is that how are these plastics stored in your body, right? So if a plastic, well, let's start with this. In that medical article, why did they find that plastics were in the blood vessels, right? So if you had a plaque in your carotid that led to a stroke, why was there plastic in that plaque? And so probably just like how most foreign things are stored in our body, what happens is they enter your bloodstream through the gut, so you eat them or drink them, and then they're recognized by your immune system, probably, I'm spitballing, and they're recognized as a foreign particle. So your immune system, your white blood cells, attack them and then deposit them in places kind of for waste removal. But we know that that's also how plaque forms, is that your white blood cells attack some sort of particle and then they get deposited in your arteries as well. So probably the plastics are stored in places like the liver and in the waste removal systems, and also deposited in the blood vessels. So it's going to be a real problem because, no, there's not a real good way to remove solid particles from your body, right?
Yeah.
So dialysis doesn't work that way or anything like that. So probably, back to our original point, the best solution to this will be telling people to avoid ingesting them as much as possible, which is to say, get a reverse osmosis water filter. Be careful where your food comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Bailey, this has been great, and we're going to do this some more, my friend. You've been a great, great guest, very informative.
My pleasure.
So we'll do it again.
Thanks so much for your time. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
You bet. That's Dr. Grant Bailey, once again, South Denver Cardiology, and hey, I know a lot of times our insurance dictates, who your doctors can be and all, but I'm telling you, if you look up Dr. Grant Bailey and he's in your network, highly recommend him to be your cardiologist, and that's just a personal endorsement. All right, so Dr. Grant Bailey, South Denver Cardiology. We're going to take a quick break. Paul the Waterman will join us right after this. And that break was very quick, as Paul the Waterman is in studio.
So first thing I want to do is pat us on the back. For the last 2 years, everything we've been saying was just stamp of approval.
Yep.
And so we've done a research, Scott. We try to bring awareness, and say, hey, this is a serious situation. And, the doctor basically reaffirmed it. And then recommending that everybody should have a, point of use for reverse osmosis for drinking water was probably the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
because you can't, he said, when he talks to patients, hey, a lot of this we can control.
Correct.
With heart disease and different cardiovascular problems. What you put in your body, whether it's food or water, it's going to be good for you or bad for you. And you know what? He clearly said the RO system's the way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. He said something that I found, scary but interesting. They still have a lot of research to do, but how do the plastics, get into the body? So, the food we eat, what the water we drink, and then it ends up in plaque. But we also know that it's penetrated the brain, and we have many microplastics in the brain that make up a plastic fork. That was on Fox News, and just before Mother's Day, it was the size of a credit card. So it's changing. So don't be surprised if something else is released regarding this huge contaminant. The other thing I worried about, though, Scott, is those microplastics carrying in carcinogens.
Right.
Bacteria can, attach themselves to a microplastic. And the research I've done is the bacteria basically, creates a film on top of the plastic that makes it, antibiotic resistant.
And, when he was talking about that, and he and I were kind of talking during the break, I said, so in that carotid artery is where they're finding that. And then when I asked the question about it being in the bloodstream, well, it's getting into your blood vessels. So, I mean, it's there, dude.
It's there. It's
in all of us.
Well, not only, but you also talked about pharmaceuticals in the water supply. You talked about, if you live next to a golf course, you clearly, if you're on well water and you live out in a high-end golf course neighborhood and you have your own well, that you're going to have the same pesticides, that they use on the golf course that's seeping into the well water. And then he also, when I talked to him over the phone, what did he say? People that live on near a golf course has a higher percentage of...
that pesticide, glyphosate, something like that. I'm going to look it up.
See, I'm not the only one that can't pronounce
words. But, he said that pesticide there is a bad deal, and it is in the water.
And it can cause, didn't he say something, can help with causing Alzheimer's, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that, the quality of our water, what this really means is that, we have to, take it upon ourselves to ensure that, and water has to be, I was thinking about this the other day. I was talking to a sales rep, they sell pharmaceuticals, and it hit me during the conversation, kind of reiterated to them that, hey, when you take a medication, the body metabolizes it, and when you expel it and you flush the toilet, now it's a metabolic, and then that medication, can be absorbed, by other people, and that was, reaffirmed today. So,
yep.
We're not trying to toot our own horn, but basically, everything that we've said has just been proven, true, both by, the doctor, the good doctor here, and then, Mark, the fellow that works at the, wastewater water treatment plant.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's something that in the grand scale of things, does everybody need their own water treatment system? Absolutely.
Glyphosate, a widely used herbicide, has been detected in Colorado's water, primarily in surface and groundwater near agricultural areas. While concentrations generally remain below human health benchmarks, concerns exist regarding potential long-term effects and the impact on aquatic ecosystems. Colorado is actively addressing this issue through investigations, water testing, and potential remediation efforts. Now, if you're just joining us and didn't hear this, what Dr. Bailey said was it just came out in, I think the periodical is called JAMA, some medical deal, where it says this is a problem for our water quality, especially near a golf course.
So we learn this. This is where the conspiracy comes in, right, Scott? The EPA has a laundry list of unregulated contaminants. I'm sure that you just mentioned is one of them. So what it means is they know it's there, but then the municipality doesn't test for it, and if it's not tested, then it's not reported in that water quality report that we're supposed to get once a year. So this is another issue. We gotta find somebody, get that congressman that we can scream at and say, hey, get with the EPA and tell them to be truthful and stop these unregulated contamination lists. Put them all out there. Let's test for it so we can really see what the true health quality is of the water that everybody's drinking.
Right.
Eliminate this false sense of security. I do not think that water quality is safe to drink. No way, based on everything that you and I have researched over the last 2 years, based on everything that people have affirmed, based on what we've talked about, and it's something that we really have to take serious. Reverse osmosis is nanofiltration. Here's the scary thing. If we don't fight the microplastics now, then the microplastics could get smaller, where an RO filter, reverse osmosis membrane, won't be effective. That's the scary part. Mm-hmm. And so I was doing, reading an article where, now nanoplastics are the biggest problem in the ocean because the plastics that were there, right, don't decay, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller. So now seafood is full of microplastics.
Yep.
Processed chicken, they said, is one of the worst. So, moms go to Costco or Sam's Club and buy the big bag of chicken nuggets, and really, what I'm reading in the research is it's nothing but a big bag of microplastics. Mm-hmm. So, we really need to start paying attention. We should go back to bottles, and reusable bottles, and bottles can be recyclable.
Yep. 303-862-5554 is the number for Water Pros. Hey, get your free in-home water test today. Folks, get an RO system.
Reverse osmosis.
From Dr. Grant Bailey, South Denver Cardiology. Paul the Waterman
is
ready to help you.
You know that, right?
Absolutely.
You reverse osmosis.
303-862-5554. Thanks for being with us for Water Talk. Have a great rest of your day.